Hey, listener. We hope you've enjoyed Season 5 of RecLess as much as we have. We are wrapping up the rest of this season and putting together new episodes for Season 6. But as we wait, we are going to highlight some new episodes from a spin-off podcast, This Parks and Rec Life. As much as we believe in professional development of ourselves as Parks and Rec professionals, we also know that we couldn't do this without a supportive home life. We hope that you enjoy these conversations and that they spark meaningful conversations for you. These episodes will be released in our feed currently, but in the future will be released in their own podcast channel and on YouTube. We hope you enjoy them. Now on with the show.
My love is a place you can always call home.
Welcome to This Parks and Rec Life, a podcast
Hannah.
explore. Shane, I'm going to start it back over. Don't do that. Okay. Welcome to This Parks and Rec Life, a podcast exploring the impact of a parks and recreation career on the home life of a professional and their family. I'm your host, Hannah Mize, and my co-host today is Shane Mize. Hello. How are you, hon?
Hey, you.
Just great. Our guests today are Meredith Lawrence. She is the Parks and Recreation Director and Assistant Public Works Director of, Meredith, I'll let you fill that in.
City of Mendota Heights in the beautiful state of Minnesota.
Fantastic. And John Stutzman, the Recreation and Leisure Services Director in the city of St. Peter. And how are you, John?
I'm good. I'm also in Minnesota on a windy and rainy something kind of day.
What's the weather in Minnesota?
Like 35, 40, like 30-mile-an-hour winds and spitting rain.
That doesn't sound...
Today.
Yeah. And it's actually cool here today as it's 66. It was so hot yesterday.
That's what it was when I was skiing in Vermont over the weekend. It was 65 degrees when I was skiing, so.
Amazing. And your shorts, right?
Not quite.
Well,
don't want to fall in shorts. I've done that.
True.
It hurts.
Yeah. Well, first of all, welcome to both of you guys. Thank you for being here today. If you've been listening to this Parks and Rec Life, you know that the guests that we've had previous to this episode have all been married spouses. And we don't want to leave out any of our Parks and Rec peeps. That not everyone that is in Parks and Rec is married. And mental health and work-life balance are important in a spousal relationship, and if you're single, and the family support that you have in being able to do this job that is really, really important to be able to balance work and life. And so we're excited to have you both here and to discuss what your support system looks like.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I'm looking forward to it.
I thought this was 90 Day Fiance.
That would be a fun twist. Definitely a fun twist. Well, normally we start the show off and we say, tell us how you met. But since you guys are friends, let's still start this off and say, tell us how you met.
Oh, man.
I don't know.
You want to take this one, Meredith?
I honestly don't remember meeting John. All I remember is that our paths crossed through work through the Minnesota Recreation and Park Association. I do remember one of the early conversations we had was a job that opened in Golden Valley where you were working at the time, and you had encouraged me to apply. And I remember at the time thinking there's no way I am anywhere near qualified for this position. And I will say I marveled at your confidence in me and your encouragement. And I think that's been a lot of how our friendship has grown. And I think to this day, we still rely on each other a lot for advice and guidance on how to make it through.
Yeah, agreed. I would echo that. I'm not positive exactly where it was. I can say that it was through MRPA involvement in some capacity, whether it was programming section meetings or the start of the Young Professional and Student Network here in Minnesota. Somehow things through that as you were getting your career started in Mendota Heights. You might have even still just been the summer tennis lead at that point as you were kind of feeling it out. Or it was obviously, if not, it was right away in as you got the first position. So, but yeah, I would agree that over the years, whether it's different projects or initiatives we worked on through MRPA together, we've definitely been there to support and push each other. And to quote another this Park and Rec Life guest, if you don't have a mentor under the age of 30, you're doing something wrong. And for a long time, especially as I evolved in the director role that I never thought I wanted, I've leaned into Meredith as that mentor quite a bit, as Chris Nunes likes to say all the time.
Yeah,
Very
Meredith
kind of you.
keeps me young as well. I'm not young, but she's trying to keep me as young as possible. I'm not replying to or getting to the technology world as quick as some, but Meredith's introduction to some of this stuff has helped out. But I'm excited to have both of y'all on, and I'll kick off with our first question about the industry itself. We talk to a lot of park and rec professionals, and they talk about a spectrum. A lot of them so far have been obviously with a partner of some sort. And early in their career, when you have this weird set of hours or unstable set of hours, sometimes it's night, sometimes it's weekend, sometimes it's both. Being unattached seems like that might be an advantage, right? At some point where you're not necessarily worrying about a kid at home or even a spouse that may be waiting on you to come home late. When you first got into this field, did you see other people struggling with something like nights and weekends and you thought, wow, this is a superpower right now. This is to my advantage that I don't have some of these potential restraints or barriers or other worries that other people have potentially on their home side. Meredith, we can start with you.
Yeah, I graduated from college and fell into a position with the city of Mendota Heights in a unique way where my boss had left with the city and they had no one else. And so I was kind of in an interim role before coming on full time. And I lived at my parents' house for the first 2 years of full-time employment with the city. And I many times look back and laugh at how easy life was at that time. I didn't have a home to take care of. I had dinner waiting for me most nights. I had a lunch that was made for me a lot of mornings to my surprise. And so life was just really easy at that time. And so to have a commission meeting and an event during the week was not difficult. And then I worked a lot of weekends during that period. And it just didn't really seem like a big deal to me at the time because there was nothing in my way. And I remember colleagues talking about schedules and interfering with kids and spouses. And at the time, I just didn't really see it as a problem. I do think, though, that at times when you don't have a spouse or kids at home, it does make you seem more available for last minute things or for nights and weekends. And so I think that was one of the things that looking back probably did happen is I took on more than I probably should have. But at the time, that was my opportunity to make my mark and learn and grow. And when you're putting in 50 hours a week regularly, it does take a toll on you.
John, was that similar for you?
Yes and no. I did not live at home after my first time job. I mean, I can't remember if I talked about this on RecLess or not, but my straight out of college for me, it was I went and taught skiing in Colorado and then worked park and rec jobs seasonally. So I bounced back and forth from living on my own to living at my folks while I was teaching skiing, and then after 3 years of doing that, then was fortunate enough to have full-time employment. So that was a different journey in itself. But I think one of the things that stuck out when you first asked the question of was I ever comparing myself to, the challenges others may have had. And I don't think that thought never crossed my mind. It was still such a fun career and it was fun things we were doing. And it was just, as Meredith said, it was kind of easy just to invest yourself into it because it was fun. I didn't think anything of it. If it was, I had an event that night or, the 3 days of 4th of July celebration where you're putting in 80 hours in 3 days or 40 hours in 3 days and you're not even thinking about it. Yeah, it was tiring, but it was just, that's what you did and it was fun and you got through it. And you kind of progressed. And I would say, really for the first probably 10 years of my career, that was kind of where it was. I think maybe the first time I started to notice it being a little different was when I started getting dogs. And, then I did have some responsibility to get home or whatnot, but still it was a hard habit to shake of, oh, I'll just finish this up half hour longer, or, oh, I'll just do this and then I'll shoot home and it's going to be okay. Or sometimes even bringing the pet to the office after hours, and when it was quiet and you could just hunker down. I think to answer this question, the second half though is, I think as I got older and started looking at that, it wasn't probably until I got into my 30s that it was, hey, this balance is important. And that was a hard adjustment, looking at it through the lens of, yeah, I can do this, but maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I do need to go home. Maybe I do need to say, this can wait for till tomorrow. And I think that's a hard transition, as you're going from career is number one to all of a sudden going, yeah, it's still number one, but why? It's not because of a lack of love for what we do. It's just kind of reprioritizing, going, I don't need to put in 50 hours like Meredith talked about. I don't have to do that every week. I can make a decision and say that can wait till tomorrow, or that's not a huge priority right now. And I think, as I look back at the last 10 years, I think that's been something that I've struggled with and had to learn, and am still learning how to adjust to.
Follow-up question, Hannah, before you go. With potentially the barrier or obstacle or whatever we want to call that family might have been earlier in your career for some, you see people more apt to source community at work. So like, oh, well, hey, I've got to get home. So there could have been 3 or 4 rec programmers in Fort Worth, and all of them are getting off at the same time. And you want to go hit a bar up? And I'm like, well, I got to go get home to Hannah, and we've got a couple kids at the house. Is there a chance that is actually preventing some people from making connections with their team that maybe were less inhibiting for y'all at first? And John first, and then Meredith.
Working for smaller teams in my first job, and being the youngest person in the department, actually in both my first 2 jobs, until the second one started to shift over, like it was just kind of the way it was. So I don't know that it was inhibiting. Where I would say it was, I did notice is maybe not in my organization, but through national and state opportunities of, okay, hey, I can go do this because I can, and why isn't everybody else doing this? So it was more looking at it from the perspective of, hey, cool, I can do this. Maybe you should do this too. Not putting my brain into their situation. And so I don't know that it was an inhibitor for me. It was more so, I was used to being the youngest one in the department or the youngest one around and not having to make those choices. And when somebody, whether it was in the organization or across the state or national, was like, hey, let's go do this, let's go do that. Maybe you should come and do this. Okay. I mean, it was easy. Like, yeah, I'll figure out how to make it work. And so I think that certainly helped me in a lot of ways. But I think as I got older, it certainly became challenging to try and separate that as priorities changed.
Meredith, and speak to that as well. But is there also any concerns when you get too close to other, where that becomes maybe your support system a little bit, and then things fracture among coworkers as well, or someone gets promoted and someone doesn't, or eventually are going for a promotion of the same job, any of those types of things?
Yeah, it's a good question. So Mendota Heights, like John was talking about being small, it was a little bit unique for me when I started out in the field. The employee at the city that was closest in age to me was in her early 40s and had a kid. So I was kind of the oddball out here. People would always just, it was their child, right? I was kind of like
Right.
the tag along kid that was here at the office. And I really loved that culture. I mean, I learned a lot from the folks I worked with, and I looked up to these folks tremendously, but there wasn't really this going out atmosphere by any means, because they had responsibilities at home that were there. The other thing that was unique for me is I reported to our assistant city administrator at the time, who is my mentor, my friend, someone that has influenced my life more than anyone really. And the very first day, I remember she said, "We will not be friends on Facebook. We will not be going out and hanging out together. This is a job and I'm your boss, and you need to be mindful of that at work." And so I think that did kind of leave an imprint on me early on, that I needed to be mindful that I was working with these people and that I needed to find support systems outside of work as well. And so that still kind of is in the back of my mind at times. I do think that it's important to get to know your team and to have team building opportunities and to see people as more than just employees and as humans. But I do think that influenced the way that I went about my life as a young professional in the workplace.
Before Shane jumps in with another question, I kind of wanted to circle back around to like the family part. There are so many times whenever we talk to couples that they have families that they're almost like, man, I've got to get home. I've got kids, or whenever I leave here, I have to shut it off and I have to not think about work anymore because there's all this stuff going on here. And in some ways that can be seen as like Shane said, as an inhibitor or kind of as something that you're kind of having to overcome. But at the same time, sometimes that can also be an escape too. Like you don't have any choice but to shut it off. Like you can't sit and think about work all night long if you are a female and you're working, because your kids need your attention and you have to shut it off and do something else. And same thing if you're a dad and you've got kids there too. So,
Oh,
I know
thanks
you're
for
welcome.
adding the dad part in.
Thought you might appreciate that.
Oh, it's also same for
Just,
dads. All you
for
dads
those
out there.
dads. Yeah,
Happy Father's Day.
to the world's most okayest dad. I think
Yeah,
you did
that's
get
right.
that
I
mug
have
one
that
year.
somewhere. I have a mug for my kids.
And then it said just kidding. But that one did poke his heart a little bit. Anyway, but no, I mean, as some that family time can be something that it forces you to have to stop. And so whenever, John, you said this, like whenever you're not forced to have to stop, then you have to start to set boundaries, that how did you come about setting those boundaries? Like how did y'all put those into place where you start to have like a better mental and work-life balance? Or have you?
I can jump in on that one. I mean, I think actually even as Shane was talking through and Meredith was talking through that last one, I really thought about, all the external families I had. For those that know me, know that I not only work hard, but I play hard, and it still changes. I've changed my priorities over the years, but I'm still going hard, and it's because of these external families that I have. And when I started my career, I was coaching baseball. I was a volunteer baseball coach, and so I did have that external, okay, I gotta go, I gotta get to practice, I gotta get to game. I was the head coach. I gotta be there, and I had to plan accordingly. And that was maybe my out, as you just described, Hannah, of like, okay, here's how I'm gonna leave. And even as it was being described, as I think that did inhibit me from doing a few things too, because I was coaching baseball and I was traveling and I had friends all over the world from my time in Colorado. And I was going to see them, and I had all these external family members that I wanted to see and keep in touch with. And so those were kind of there. And I think that's how I dealt with it. Is it was just always being on the go with something, whether it was hobbies, whether it was volunteer commitments, whether it was other work commitments outside of the primary employment. And so those were ways to do it. But I think before I turn it over to Meredith, the hardest part too, though, is what you said, Hannah, is how do you turn it off? How do you turn off the brain of, okay, and I'm sitting at home and, it's quiet night and, I'm thinking about 75 things that I can do tomorrow or should have done today or whatever it may be. But I think
How
those
do you?
external factors, what was that?
How do you do that? What have you done?
I'll let you know when I figure that out.
That's why you're kicking it to Meredith. I gotcha.
Absolutely.
Yeah, geez. No, I think the boundaries piece has been something that's been really difficult for me, because a lot of our coworkers here at 4:30, they have to leave because they have a kid to pick up and they don't have an option. And I think for me, it's a little funny, but I call my parents on the way home, typically most nights. They
And you're
watch
close
council
to your
meetings.
parents.
Super close. Yeah, I live 3 minutes away from them, and as an only child with parents in their early 70s, I think I've been more involved than most would be with family. But I call my parents most nights on the way home. I have a 25-minute commute, so it's an easy way to check in and passes the time well. And they watch all of our council meetings, so they've usually got a couple comments to share with me. But it's funny because if I'm not leaving at a decent time and they haven't heard from me, I'll usually get a text that says, "Are you okay?" And that's
Yeah.
usually my reminder that, okay, I need to pack up and I need to be done. But especially when I lived at home, I was getting calls all the time. I was running in to deal with emergencies all the time, and I'm lucky my parents were two folks that worked really hard, had jobs that they were on call for, and they really understood that. But they really went through this job identification with me of what actually is this. And I'll always remember being in Duluth and getting a call that we had an incident we had to get back for, and they dropped me off at the office on the way home, and that was just how it was going to be for the night. And so I think there's been a lot that I've learned of boundaries, and it's not something that I did very well starting out. I will say I was someone that was going to grind and grind and grind. I would go to every meeting that I needed to be at, that I thought I needed to be at. I'd be the one volunteering to come in any extra time to get things done. And at the time, I think it did help me get to where I am today. But I do look back and ask myself, did I miss moments that I wish I could get back? And I think one of the things is a few years ago, we had some health concerns in our family, and that really made me take a step back and ask myself, what do I want to be remembered as someday? Do I want to be remembered as an incredible employee, or do I want to be remembered as a really good friend and an incredible family member? And so one of the things I've started doing, and a lot of people laugh at me as I am an exempt employee, I don't get overtime, but I do log my time. And I think logging my time, not to the minute by any means, but it does provide an avenue for me to feel okay to leave early
Mm.
some days, to feel okay to come in late some days, to just feel like I am putting in the time, even though it's typically significantly more than 40 hours. But just being more mindful of how much am I actually doing, because I think a lot of us will get to the point that we've put in 60 hours and we're so passionate about the work that sometimes we don't even realize that we've done that.
There's probably a diminishing return at some point on the return you put. At 40 you can maximize what you're doing, maybe at 50, but at 60, 70, 80, at some point you're not giving the best you anymore, and so those hours aren't counting hour for hour anymore, because it's taking you maybe 2 hours to do an hour's worth of work at some point, right? Because you're exhausted, you're tired, there's other things going on. I think it's interesting in some ways, and everyone that knows Hannah and I know, we got married when I was 20, and we had 4 kids by the time I was 28. And so we had Sarah and Jeff O'Shea on recently, and they had known each other since they were 16. I was telling Hannah, I've known you since I was 18, but because of ambition and opportunity, I have left Hannah at times for long stretches. And when we went from Fort Worth to Missouri City, I left Hannah for,
Six
that was
months.
January, 6 months. Yep.
Mhm.
I drove back on the weekends. But during the week, I'm single now. I'm unattached. There is no family I'm rushing home to. I got to make a phone call every night, but a lot of people make phone calls at night, as both of y'all just stated as well. And then when I went from Missouri City to Hutto, I left for 11 months. It was essentially a full year. And what I found interesting in that, so I have some, uh, I can't say that I know exactly what you're going through in everything, but I have some semblance of that. What I found is how much more gracious an organization is with someone that has to get home to someone versus someone that has no one to quote unquote get home to. Like, um, oh, Shane, don't stay too late. You got your family at your house. You got to go take care of them, or, make sure you're blank. But if your family's in Fort Worth and you're in Missouri City, no one's saying, hey, Shane, make sure you get home. You've put in 50 hours already this week. Have you ever felt like you've almost had to defend your personal time? Like, I know we've talked about, and y'all both mentioned trying to find some line, but have you ever felt like to an organization, no, just because I am potentially not married or don't have kids at the house doesn't mean I'm the one that always has to work the weekends or the emergency or this random date, the holidays, for example. Have you ever felt like you had to defend what personal time means to someone that potentially is unattached in the eyes of an organization? We'll go
Meredith,
Meredith.
you want to kick us off?
I can go first. Yeah, I have a unique probably side of this because I work for an organization that culture is really, really important. And I don't know how many times a week I hear someone say, Meredith, go home, or, Meredith, go take care of your friends or your family, or go handle that during the day, and it's okay. And so I am probably the one that I'm getting told the opposite of, like, you don't need to cover this. You have a life outside of work and you don't need to be so dedicated. So
But are they
I'm
saying
really
that at 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week or 60 hours a week? When are they starting to take care of your personal time? Like when are they worried about it? I guess is the question.
I'm pretty lucky that they're worried about it all the time,
Yeah.
and we all look out for each other. I would say I unique for me is our public works director has his wife works outside of the state, so she flies in and flies out every week, and so we're both kind of here like, hey, well, we don't have a family we have to go home to, and so we can both be here. And he's always the one saying to me too, go home, go home. There's more to life than work. So do I think I was taken advantage of? I don't think I was taken advantage of. I think I took advantage of it. I think
Mhm.
I took advantage of knowing that I could be more flexible. When we had to schedule an emergency meeting, I could make most nights work. And I think it was more so the guilt that I have of myself than I do looking at the organization saying they took advantage of me. And I think that's really unique. Tonight at 4:40, I looked at one of my staff and I said, you were supposed to be done 10 minutes ago. And he's like, I'm trying to wrap something up. And I'm like, you got to get home, go home. And he's like, I know, I knew you were going to say that. I knew when you walked out, you were going to say that exact same thing. So I think a lot of it's culture, but I think it was more on me than the organization.
To answer the question as specifically, I start with an answer to the specific question, Shane. I think the only time I ever felt like that was in my first role on Christmas Eve, because that one wasn't a holiday that we had off in that first role. And I do remember working Christmas Eve, which was never bothered me. I mean, I worked Christmas Eve. Prior to that, when I'd work retail, I sought out opportunities to go work Christmas Eve because,
Sure.
frankly, I thought working Christmas Eve in retail was absolutely hilarious, and it was better than doing work at my parents, like cleaning or cooking or whatever. I can go get paid and laugh at people coming in for last second stuff. So
Stressing out. Yeah.
that culture was kind of ingrained in me. But I do remember, being the youngest, being low man on the totem pole, whatever the verbiage is for that. But then being there with like 10 people in City Hall, all of City Hall, there's like 10 people, and we're all just wandering around staring at each other, going like, what are we doing? Like, why are we here? And what it is. And basically about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, people would start going, all right, when is enough? And when are we going to do this? And I think that was the only one specifically that I ever felt like they were saying, hey, you don't have a say in this. But I also look back and laugh because those are some of the funnest days at work, because you're literally walking around from department to department in City Hall going, what are you doing today? What are you doing today? What are you doing today? And laughing about it with all the other low people on the totem pole. But I think, Meredith hit a word, and I actually jotted this down as I was thinking about this question, is the culture. That's such a huge word. And I don't know that I realized it early enough in my career, but as I have gotten older, as I have taken on leadership roles, that has become more and more important to me and the teams that I'm a part of. And I was blessed early in my career. Maybe it wasn't quite as aggressive as Meredith was saying of get out of here, but it was, hey, you're doing this because it's fun. You're supposed to have fun. Like, we need you here these days. We need you to do these things. But if I had other jobs, or I was volunteering, or I was traveling, it was like, yeah, go do these things. That's what it's there for. My first supervisor, I remember, and I still try and carry this as a supervisor, is if you're on vacation, like, I'm going to try not to bother you. Like, you're not here. If I absolutely have to, then yes, I will. But if you're on vacation, I'm not going to send you a text and say, hey, I need this silly thing because I can't find it. I'm going to find a way to do that because I'm going to respect that time, because that was ingrained in my head early in my career. But it's that culture that I think, again, the first two jobs, I don't know that I realized how lucky I was that they had that culture of being flexible and saying, I remember, when I worked for the city of Bloomington, I was working with adult leagues and I was working with youth associations, and it was a lot of 5, 6, 7 o'clocks at night. And so I started, coming in a little bit later in the morning rather than being there right at 8 a.m. And other people started noticing, and my boss is like, have you also noticed that he's always the last one here too? So yeah, we're not going to question that. And that culture has really stuck with me, of doing now what Meredith's talking about, of making sure that employees are going home and that they're not staying late and that things can wait if they're getting calls on the weekends. And that you're building that culture, and whether it's full-time, part-time, or even seasonals, like building that culture that it is okay. I think is important as a leader in any capacity, whether it's, again, over seasonals, whether it's leading an entire department. And I was blessed with that. So, again, that's why I started with the actually answering your question. I don't know that I've ever truly felt guilted or pressured to say, you've got to be there. I think I was my own worst enemy of, oh, I am going to stop by the fields tonight and talk to the softball teams. I am going to go check out this event happening tonight. I am going to go look at what this youth association is talking about that's an issue. And I've had to learn that based on the cultures that have been created as I've grown as a leader, of realizing that I need to be the one to set those boundaries as well, because we are passionate about what we do, and it's easy to get sucked into that. As you've talked about, Shane, how cool is it that you get to bring your family to events? I didn't do that with, obviously, kids, but I've done that with my parents and my brother,
Right.
my brothers and friends. So it's building that culture and being a part of a culture that supports all that I think changes the dynamic of everything, versus organizations that kind of dump on you because you don't have a family or you're the low person on the totem pole or whatever it may be. I think that makes a big difference. And so I liked that Meredith brought up culture.
I always say that it's not work-life balance for me, it's work-life integration. And some people hate that I say that, but I will take a call at night for work-related purposes, but I also may take a personal call during the day and handle that. I may come in at night and take care of an emergency, but I'm going to leave during the day if I have an emergency and not feel guilty. And so I think for me, that's kind of been one of the things I've worked through. And that's not everyone's cup of tea. I respect that. And I probably see the world a little differently than some people do too. But I think for me, it's been that integration piece of, I don't feel bad leaving if I know that I've been here for a whole weekend.
I think it's interesting that all three of you have felt in some way or another either the negative side of that culture or the positive side of it. And now all three of you are in a spot that you're able to cultivate that culture in all three of your departments and really push that for the other people that are with you and that are under you, which I think is really powerful. I know Shane has talked quite a lot lately about culture. Like, he and I have had a lot of discussions about culture and what that looks like and how it's integrated, how you push it out to the people that that you're working with. So
Yeah, I always believe culture's little c. A lot of people think it's big C and everything's downstream of it. And I've tried to convince people it's little c, and it's downstream of your processes and your systems. And when you get those right, then people will talk about the culture, because culture to me isn't writing family on the wall, or, get shit done on the wall, or whatever dumb phrase people put on a wall to try to inspire a group of people, but then treat them really like treat them really shitty, in their work environment. It's actually creating systems and structure where they treat them really well. And so downstream, they feel like they're loved and that they're seen. I got a question for y'all. And it's kind of a, do you walk the walk and talk the talk? So you lead people, and some of the people you lead have a family at home, and some of the people you lead are single. Do you ever weight that differently? Do you ever say, well, Steve can work Friday night, he's by himself, but Joan's got, a family at the house. I need her to work the senior program or something different. Do you ever do the one thing we've already been talking about, the other side, where tempting or not, you're like, facts are this person doesn't have someone at the house and this one does, I can make them work this weekend, or we need this one thing out of them. Do you ever feel, even if you don't do it, have you ever felt like, oh, I can get why someone would say that? I'll go with Meredith first.
So I have 4 direct reports at this time, all of which are married or engaged or in a long-term relationship. So I don't have someone that is single that's directly underneath me. Obviously, we've got seasonals and part-time
Right.
staff. That's a different situation. But I think one of the things is I see the world a little bit differently than most people do because I've lived this life being single and I understand what it could impact someone negatively in the field for. So I could see that it would be easy to give a task to someone or a project to someone knowing that it might not be something they have to reschedule their personal life around. But I think we can have sympathy for that because we've lived that life. And I do think culture is a big piece of this. When we have emergencies that come up or events that come up, I'm lucky our team is really good about, does anyone have plans this weekend? Or we have a policy that not all of us can be gone the same day. And we, in my door today, had 2 employees saying, okay, we both want to take this weekend off, but are you going to be in town? And then what can we cover for you when you're going out of town? And so I think part of this is the culture piece of, I'm not going to put that on someone, and our team won't allow us to because we've built something so strong that we care about each other more than just employees. We care about each other's personal lives. And I think that is what shines through when times get hard.
So the 4 you have, do any of them have kids? Like, are they weighted potentially differently that some have kids but some don't? And so, well, Steve and Janet's got a kid, so we're going to give them all Christmas Eve or something like that.
So one of my 4 does have a child, actually just had their second child. And I will say the schedule is much more rigid with knowing that she has to leave at 4:30.
Yeah.
Otherwise, her kid
Pick up
is
the
not
kid.
going to get
Right.
picked up. Yep. Yep. And so I think one of the things I am more mindful of is when I'm scheduling meetings, not scheduling a meeting with her that goes right to 4:30 because I know it might run late and then she is running at the last second. So to your point, do I treat them differently? I don't think that I
You
treat
can
them differently, but
see,
I'm mindful
right.
of it. Yeah.
Even
Yep.
though y'all have never really been treated unfairly for not having some huge family at the house, you can see where sometimes it is easier to take advantage of or pull a lever on someone that just doesn't have anything to get home to as far as timeline or schedule or pickup or drop off or etc. versus maybe another one. And I hate to say it that way, but you know,
I will say my staff know the Tuesdays we don't have council and commission meetings, so it's usually one Tuesday a month. It's nothing crazy, but they know that's the day I golf. And
yeah.
they know we can't go. I had one of them come in and she's like, I only have 2 minutes because I know you need to get to golf. And I'm like, I do. That's my child right now, is I have to get to the course and get ready to go. And so I think part of this is we all have priorities in life, whether it's family, whether it's hobbies, whether it's friends. And I think it's being mindful and respectful of that and understanding that there is more to life than a job. And if we treat people well, they will treat our community well. And that's one of the big pillars that I feel is if I treat them well, if I respect them, if I value them and appreciate them, then in return, they're going to do that same thing with our community. And that's what we ask of our staff.
You know, it's funny. Before we get to John, I'm gonna put Junior on blast. I think both of you have gotten to meet Junior, my park superintendent, who I love, hardworking dude, and we've gone through a lot together in Pflugerville. And he's got a wife and he's got a daughter, and he's rarely ever said, "Hey, Brittany's moving to UNT. I need to go move her up." You know, once or twice a year, but every Thursday he gets his edge up. And let me tell you, from day one, he was making sure that I knew Thursday by 4:10, he was out of the office. He had his weekly hair appointment. Don't fuck with my hair appointment, you know what I mean? And so it's funny that yeah, like he wasn't like, hey, I got to take my daughter to hockey practice every week. It was like, hey, I'm getting my hair cut every Thursday at 4:10. You know, it's not your time, it's my time, you know. And I think in 7 years I've been in Pflugerville, I've had to like twice or 3 times say, listen, you're going to hate me, but I need you to skip that or miss it and reschedule it. And so, yeah, whatever it is, I try to be respectful of. This is Jeff, my AD, golfs every third Friday. The third Friday of every month, he and a group for a long time golf. And I try to hold that dear. And Jeff's got a son, you know, and Jeff's got a wife. And he sometimes has to get to a soccer practice or whatever, but I know his golf routine more than I know Luca's soccer practice. I mean, like that's important to Jeff's got this. In fact, this upcoming Friday is the third Friday of the month, and so it's one of those where, I think if you got an employee and you care about them, whatever it is, whether that kid's got a drop off pickup or you got to get your edge up, you try to make sure you vanguard those when you can. John, have you ever had anybody that you could see that you treated them differently, whether it was, whether you did it, on purpose or it just happened to happen, or you just justified it? You said, listen, if I have to have one person stay late, I'm gonna have the person that doesn't have a kid at the house or whatever. Have you ever done that? And even maybe after, it's been like, damn, I shouldn't have done that. Or I hate it when people do that to me and then I just did it to this person. You ever had any of those?
I get like Meredith. I don't know that I would say I've ever treated anybody differently for that reason. I'd actually say maybe the opposite is because of the way I have chosen to
Oh,
do
you
things.
treat the ones without family more important, huh? Look at
Well,
you.
no, that's not where I was going with that either. But I think I'm more aware of those that will follow the habits that Meredith and I talked about of putting in 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And I think about going back to my days in Golden Valley where I got my first full-time direct report even as a recreation
Mm,
supervisor. And she had worked her way up from a part-time job and we changed the status into a full-time job. And it was one of those that I regularly had to say, go home. And I was seeing these patterns that Meredith and I had talked about of just one more thing. Just let me, I got to get this done, or I'm going to go check out this program. And it was one of those, like, seeing that basically seeing myself going, go home. Everything
yeah.
Meredith said earlier of, you know what, your family is going to be more important. How do you want to be remembered? Do you want to be remembered because you stopped in at this program at 7:30 at night, or do you want to be remembered because you went out with your friends or you took care of your parents or whatever? And so as Maddie evolved in her career, I had to remind her a lot. I'm like, just go home. Stop working every night or staying so late or whatever it may be. I mean, even to the day I left, I'm like, go home, get out of here, do something. But now that I'm in St. Peter, I have 5 direct reports, which runs the gamut. I have my newest employee who's been here a little over 6 months is a permanent part-time employee, 28 hours a week. Doesn't have family, fresh out of college. And then I have people with adult children and grandchildren and things like that. And so I do feel like I encourage them. Starting with the part timer that's fresh out of school. We wrote in that job description that other duties as assigned or help in areas. And, she's certainly been great of changing her hours when need be, or helping out in the library that's part of our department. But it's always, I ask. It's almost never, I need you to do this. These are your general hours. I know we wrote in there that they need to be flexible. So are you able to? I think the only times I do the I need you to is if it's, 3, 4, 5 weeks out, then I can say, hey, barring this not working in your schedule at all, we need you to do this. With those that do have families, whether it's older kids or even high school kids down to an employee who's got younger kids, I think one thing that's been very interesting to me, we talked a ton about culture that I've watched in these employees, is I feel like our office is the office of the community center. And when our office closed, we basically have a building supervisor there and the office is then closed. So it's an 8 to 5 thing. And when I got here, a lot of the staff felt like, hey, we need to be here 8 to 5. We need to take care of this office and this building. And I came in and said, well, wait a minute. Yes, that's true. We need to have coverage, but it's okay for you not to be here. Like it's okay to do these other things. And Shane, you talked about walking the walk. I came in and was saying, look, I'm going to be here late for meetings, so I'm not going to be here right away at 8 a.m. Or I'm going to be working in the car on my longer commute here. So yes, I'm working, but I'm not there physically. And I'm going to take my vacations because that's what PTO was for. And the first year, I think it was a very hard transition for the staff to see the director acting like that. But it's been interesting over the last year now. All 4 of my full-time reports are starting to see this, and I'm getting more time off requests and more, hey, we're getting out of here and we're getting vacations, or hey, the one with the younger kids is saying, hey, my kids get home at 3 o'clock. I'd love to be out of here at 3 o'clock when I can to be home for them. I'll be back for the night programs because that's what she wants to do. But from 3 to 6:30 or whatever, I'm gonna go do that. And then so I'm seeing them starting to follow the lead that I set and going, oh, this is the culture. We can get out of here, and it is okay to do that. And so I know that's the opposite effect of what you're talking about, but seeing them kind of go, oh, aha, like I don't have to be here. We did build a system that works. We did build a culture that is adaptable versus 8 to 5 every day, and then we figure it out.
Yeah, before Hannah comes in, I've worked a long time, 20 plus years working on my 22nd year in the industry. And so you get to experience a lot, um, babies and sadly there's been funerals, there's been a lot of weddings, there's been engagements. And it's funny, I was just thinking, Hannah, you can help me with this in some ways. I've had a lot of people under my management at one point or another get engaged, get married, have a kid, and you start to see not anything you've done, but they start to recalibrate, right? And I'm thinking of Lauren and Lindsay and
Right.
Krista and Julia, all at Missouri City. Jeremy, hell, I was best man in Kyle's wedding. All those staff were under me in Missouri City. Here, not so much my direct reports, but Rob and Ashlyn and Alyssa and some of those others as well, who have all some of them have gotten married. One of them's gotten married, has a kid. I've seen Jonathan and Timmy have kids. And so they had, because there's kind of layers to it, right? Like we've had people on that, we've had the Weinstocks that when they were just married, but they didn't have their kids yet, the spouse is like, yeah, I get it. Do what you got to do. Come in late. I will show up to the pumpkin patch party or the movie night. And, but when kids come in, you start to have to even recalibrate. Have y'all ever experienced like seeing the recalibration of an employee that is gone from I can be your nighttime guy to like, hey, now I need to be gone at 7, and now, hey, I've got my son's got practice at 5:30. Have you ever seen some of that? John first.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one employee I'm thinking of in St. Peter here, she's really kind of recalibrated that again as her kids have gotten older and of that early school age career. I mean, again, I get to see the PTO reports and whatnot, and seeing the mountains of PTO she's got, and now she is starting to flex her schedule. And like Meredith said, it's putting in 50 hours a week, but it's like, okay, fine. That's not my expectation of you at that position, but if that's what you're going to do, get out of here at 3 o'clock and go greet your kids at home. And she's now started taking vacations, and I'm going, yes, you need to do that. Stop banking these hours just to bank them. And so I'm seeing that kind of change a little bit. I would also say maybe not in a leadership role, but I've watched coworkers, go through that same process of maybe they're going hardcore to start, and they're putting in the long hours and they're burning at both ends. And all of a sudden they've got kids or whatnot, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, okay, hang on, I do have to go home, or I am going to come in late, or whatever it is. So I think it's what is that culture that helps people realize those priorities instead of simply just saying this is the way it's got to be. And I know for me, that's been part of my evolution, is putting that together, because I think I said this earlier, why aren't people taking advantage of these opportunities early in their career? Well, they had different priorities than I did early in my career. And now I'm recognizing that in people of, yeah, maybe you don't want to go to NRPA or go to this happy hour for MRPA or whatever it is. And that's cool. Like, you're doing your thing, you're doing it your way. Whereas early in my career, it was kind of like, well, this is a great opportunity. Why aren't you taking advantage of it?
Yeah, I think before we get to Meredith, I think I'm not saying the leadership style you should follow is Dana White's from the UFC, but I heard him one time talk about fight weeks are fight weeks. And that's kind of like event weeks are event weeks, right? Like sometimes things are just all hands on deck. What are you going to do? But other than fight weeks at UFC, if he hears that one of his employees has their kids or their wife or their spouse has something and they're not at it, he's furious at them. Like, why are you here? Your son's playing in a baseball game. I don't care if it's a practice. Like, why are you here? And so I have felt the same way. I remember Kelsey, who I will always have a special place in my heart for because she was my AD here in Pflugerville. Not for very long. She left me very quickly, and I want to point that out for the record. Very too quick. But and she's now the director in College Station. But when Hannah had her health scare, like I got to take off 6 weeks to take care of Hannah, and like I didn't have to worry about a thing, and Kelsey took care of it the whole time. And so, but when Kelsey first got to Pflugerville, her first day of her first week, she came into my office and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna leave a little early. I got to go pick somebody up." And I said, "Hey, you're the assistant director of this department. Never tell me or ask me anything again. Like, I don't need to know when you're arriving. I don't need to know when you're leaving. There's expectations. Council nights were here. Parks Commission nights were here. But like on a random Tuesday, just leave. Say goodbye. Don't ask my permission for anything. You're the assistant director of this freaking department. I don't want you to say, hey, I gotta. And so, I think some places, and she had obviously worked in some places previously where at some point she had to tell someone why she was leaving and justify it in some way. And so, it feels great, honestly, to have all those people that I mentioned. It feels great to have observed them go through their life roles and me be lucky enough to tell other people, yeah, it, if their workflow changes because they've gotten married or now they're having kids, we're all going to adjust and make it work. Like I love that I was a part of that process. Meredith, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, we've had employees here. I have a coworker that was engaged when she started. She got married. 2 years later, she has a kid, and I do see that priorities change. And that's, I think, natural. I think we can all understand that. I would actually say, I think over the last 3 years, I've seen myself have that transformation, and I would hope that other people in the office have seen that. That's been one of my goals is to really reprioritize life. And sometimes it takes an incident that makes you sit back and say, Jesus, I need to change. And I think for me, it was that instance of saying, I can't keep being married to this job. I need to be married to the world that I love and the people that I love and the friends that I love and the hobbies that I love. And so I would hope that my coworkers would see a transformation. I think a large part of that came from looking myself in the mirror and saying, I can't expect my staff to flex their schedules if I don't do it because they're seeing me not doing it and they're scared to know, is it okay? And so I think for me, it was that transformation that I've tried to make myself of I'm not here at 7 o'clock anymore in the morning. We open at 7. I used to religiously be here at 7, and I'm not because I know that I'm going to be here late or I'm going to have a weekend commitment here. And so some of it's just being okay with it yourself. And I think that was my biggest barrier was accepting that I wasn't going to be here all the time, like John said, and knowing that staff are going to keep things running. They are going to do their jobs. We hire good people, they do good work, and we have to let them do that work.
I love to hear that from all of you guys. As we're talking about like outside of work, I kind of want to go in that direction and y'all's support system. So Meredith, you touched on the fact that you've got family that's close by and you're very close with them. And John, I know you the same. Besides just your family, how have you guys cultivated a support system outside of work? Because I know you can be really close to your coworkers, but also to be able to have those boundaries where you can walk away from this and walk into something else. What has cultivating a support system outside of this looked like?
And the support system should be for support, also for celebration. Who do you
Yes,
celebrate with outside of work? Like enjoy wins and losses with.
go
You
for it,
want to go
Meredith.
first? You want me to go first again? Wow.
Whichever
You're
one.
Doesn't
I don't
making me
matter.
care.
go.
Doesn't matter.
You're making
Ladies
me go
first.
first. Thank you.
Yes, what Shane said.
Yeah, I think the support system piece is huge. I always say that I am lucky to have friends that have turned into family, being an only child, and not having a lot of extended family close by. I really rely on my friends to be my family, and they know that. I have a lot of friends that have young kids, and Auntie Meredith is going to show up at games, and Auntie Meredith is going to show up at practices, and I'm going to show up at birthday parties because uh, they almost feel like my own kids at times. And so family and friends have been huge for me. I've got an extensive group of mentors that I don't know how I would be where I am without them. And I'm lucky that the text that I sent that the day's going bad, I know I'm going to get a call and I'm going to have someone that's going to relate to me. I think that's the hard part sometimes with family is they don't understand necessarily the political dynamics. I will say I'm lucky. My dad used to be a city council member, so he can understand a lot of it. But he's also very protective of me. And the second that someone doesn't agree with me, he gets upset. And so some of this is understanding that there are people out there that have lived this and they can live it with me. But I am so grateful for the friends that also aren't afraid to put me in my place and say, we're going to do this and you're going to come. Because I'm a huge introvert. It's surprising. My staff all laugh and say, you're one of the most outgoing introverts around. But I love my alone time. I like to be alone reading at home. And they're the ones that are pushing me, saying, no, you're going to come do this with us. And I played college tennis, and I will always say that the teammates that I have will forever be the sisters that I never had because we went through so many good times and so many bad times together in those 4 years. And so a lot of them live close, so I see them a lot. But I think that to your point, your coworkers can be a support system. I think that my team, our team, incredible. I know that when I walk in the door, I've got 4 people looking at me, smiling and asking how I'm doing, and they're going to be there in the good times and the bad times. But there's also a lot that I protect them from that they don't know is happening, and that's a large piece of this too. That there's things that I'm enduring that may not always be visible to them, and I have to have people that I know I can confide in and are going to come through for me. And so that's what I love most about this profession is the people that have turned into friends, that have turned into family. And I would not be where I am today without them. And my family is incredible as well. There's no one that sits through watching 4 hour long council meetings and enjoys them and follows along like my family does. And since the time I was in sports and in school, they traveled the world to support me, and I
Well, if they saw you play
can't be more
tennis, that's
grateful.
boring. Tennis is boring, so council's boring.
Better than soccer.
Yeah, yeah,
No, soccer's enjoyable.
yeah. They were one of the only parents that went to a lot of matches, and so they also were the ones bringing people. They were the candy parents, is what they were known for. They always had candy for us, but yeah, I think that's the big thing as I look back in my life so far of 31 years, and not like it's anything crazy. And I am so grateful for the people. And I also hope that I can be that support system for others as well, because I have benefited greatly.
John, you're 31, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. A little while ago.
It's a rough 31.
Yes, a very rough 31. And actually, Shane, I think that leads into, my answer to start at least is, Meredith obviously hit home people, and I could echo what she said is the blood family that I have is awesome, as evident just by I just got home from Vermont last night visiting my brother and my 2-month-old nephew. And just the support system
We saw those
that
photos.
Yep, yep. The support system that my brothers have offered. Neither of them are here in Minnesota, but I mean, we give each other crap and we talk and we've been there. I mean, my parents, like Meredith's parents, I mean, they were coming to watch me coach. I mean, when I was coaching baseball, they're coming and wearing jackets that say "mom" with my number on it, and parents are like, "Who's your kid?" "Oh, the coach." "Oh, okay." They either got really quiet or they talked their ears off at that point, but. They've been coming and watching me do it. And I even go back further. If I had 3 grandparents that lived into their 90s, and my bonus grandma, when my grandfather remarried after my biological grandma passed away when I was very young, she's still alive and in her 90s. So I was blessed with support system, top to bottom, that they were coming to these things from early ages, and still there. I think where it was unique, and where Meredith talked about the people, for me, I have been very blessed with an opportunity to do a lot of eclectic portions of life, from skiing in college, or ski racing in college, and making, as Meredith talked about, great friends that are teammates that become family. The college people that I still keep in touch with, 90% of them are my college teammates. Another friend of mine I've known since kindergarten, and we don't talk regularly, but we talk enough. And he lives in New York, and he got married in Colombia. and invited me to the wedding. And of course, absolutely, how would I pass up an opportunity like that? And so I would say, early in my career, it was filling it with these experiences and these things that brought people together. But that was my relief. That was my support. Is I'm going to leave work and I'm going to go coach baseball, or I'm going to go on a ski trip with these people, or whatever it may be, or I'm going to go, travel to another country for a wedding for somebody I've known for 40 years. I think it's things like that were really early in my career that really were my outlets, but that also then built a really, really cool network of people that it's like I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't realize what was going on, but now that I'm reprioritizing things, it is seeing, hey, I've got these people that are in my corner. I've got these people that want to make it a priority to see each other, that want me to come visit. And I think that's really been a fun transition for me, is taking it from the experience that was my outlet early in my career to it is the people. And as you guys have talked about on RecLess a ton, I'm unbelievably blessed by our NRPA family. I mean, that is a support system that's work related, but I mean, the 15 or whatever of us that are so close that we can share everything. And I think for me, that was a huge transition of allowing myself grace to feel vulnerable, to feel. I think that was always something that was hard for me. And I think one of the first groups that I could truly do that on all subjects, instead of compartmentalizing the conversations, was with that group of, yeah, you know what, things are hard right now personally, things are hard professionally, things are, as you said, Shane, things are awesome and I need to celebrate this, but I don't know who to go celebrate with. That group was really one that I think taught me how to have grace for myself, to be authentic, to feel what I feel, to acknowledge what I feel, and not feel like, oh, I got to do this by myself, and really bring it in and take that to the level of being authentic in those great moments and in those hard moments, and being able to do that and taking that to other areas of my family, whether it's blood family, whether it's friends that I've known since junior high or kindergarten, to my college teammates, to people I met in Colorado. And I think that's kind of been the evolution for me, and how important it is to know that you do need to give yourself grace to be okay with not being okay, or to be okay to celebrate, or to talk to people and bring these people along with you, or let them bring them along with you. And I think, the last piece of that, and while it is somewhat work related, I think for those that know me know how important mentoring and mentorship is to me. And I think that's another outlet that I've found. Is Meredith talked about, passing it forward, setting the example. I think that's something I've had people do this for me, even when I didn't realize they were doing it for me. And it's become a big part of who I am. And whether it's I'm receiving mentorship when I'm in need, or as Meredith talked about, being able to pass it on, like that is an outlet for me too. That's another experience that I now at least am smart enough to say, hey, this is developing relationships. But it's still an outlet, like sitting down with a young professional who's in their first job and sees the world wide-eyed, but it's awesome and it's doing this, but then having those real moments of saying, well, maybe this isn't exactly what I want. I'm trying to transition. What do you suggest? I think though that's an outlet for me too, Hannah, as I look at that question. So again, it's been eclectic for me as I look at that, and I've been very blessed by an eclectic group of people that I wouldn't trade for the world.
I think one of the cool things listening to you guys explain this little part, and going back to what we've talked about whenever we've talked with couples, is, you have to reframe every few years with what this looks like and how you interact with it and how you think about it. And if you have somebody that you're going home and you're talking to, hopefully you're having those conversations and you're reframing with them. If you're single and you're not necessarily able to talk about these things, like, do you journal it? Is it this a conversation that you have with your family as you reframe what this looks like? I think y'all have definitely done it well, of being very introspective and figuring out where you are in this. I think y'all have done a really good job of defining what this looks like for yourself?
Well, thank
Do you
you. And
think
Hannah,
it's
oh, go ahead, Meredith.
no, you go.
I was just going to say, I think you may have just given more credit to me, at least, than is deserved, because I think it is one thing, like I said, that grace and understanding what I've been doing is not exactly something I've done well. And thinking about how you frame this show of trying to help people, I think that is an important thing, just to say that it is okay to not know. It is okay to be crappy at giving yourself grace, and not knowing when to reevaluate, because it's hard, especially for those of us that are driven and are passionate. It's very hard to do that. And not to go too long-winded, but I think for me, and we've done this 1,000 times over the last 6 years, but COVID as a single person was very difficult, whether it was work related, whether it was personally related. Like, that was a challenging time. And I think for me, that was probably where I really did start to realize this stuff. I've had the aha moments throughout prior to that, but I think that was the really aha moment of, I can't keep doing things this way. And whether it is journaling or being more authentic or finding these groups and putting trust into things, into people more, instead of internalizing it and beating myself up over things. I think COVID taught us that you can't do that. You're gonna go nuts. You're gonna lose it. And I would just say to anybody listening that is doing that, or in a single situation or whatever it may be, that don't wait until that life-changing or world-changing event. Start realizing that earlier. And it's going to be different for everybody. You listed off a ton of great ideas, whether it's journaling, whether it's talking to people, whether it's talking to blood family, finding your non-blood family, and whatever it may be. But have those moments to seek out the chance to reframe it and reevaluate, as you said, Hannah, versus getting to a point where you're like, okay, now what? Because I think it can sneak up on you. And I think that whether I realized it or not, I think prior to COVID, it was sneaking up on me, and COVID just exemplified that, where I all of a sudden did have to reevaluate.
And I was just going to bring up, I think, Hannah, you brought up vulnerability, and I think that's something that I don't do well. I think most people know that I'm a very, very difficult shell to crack. I keep my emotions very, very tight within myself. And so part of it is finding people that you can trust to be vulnerable with, and that's difficult. I don't open up easily about my life to many people, and it takes me a long time to get there. And I actually do a lot better writing how I'm feeling than I can speaking that way. And I think part of it is getting to know yourself well enough that you know how best to communicate, and finding people that genuinely care about you. Because when you go home and there isn't anyone there, it can be, at times it can be lonely. And I think that's the big thing, is finding that support system that is going to back you and is going to be there for you and really cares about who you are and what you want in life.
I mean, it's lonely enough. Tom hired a part-time person just to, he hired some summer day camp counselor to be his wife. I think she still thinks she's on the payroll. Like, I think she probably doesn't know that she can. Melissa, you can get out at any time. That's what we're saying. So let's y'all have got and first of all, I think Meredith hit on an interesting point. Like, when I come home, not only do I have Hannah there and kids there, and there's an instant support system there that no matter how shitty I might have done at council, there's someone that says it's okay, we love you. And y'all at some point have that as well, but they're probably not at the house. You have to source them. You got to call them. But we've almost created a two-income society, right? So it's fairly expensive to live by yourself, I'd imagine. And I always talk about how the dish fairy took care of all my dishes. I don't know when the last time I've done a dish. It's incredible. There's just this dish fairy that I come home to, and they're all done. And so, like, but there is no fairies at y'all's house. You got to do all the laundry, you got to do all the cleaning or whatever it is. And air conditioning breaks. If something happens, you've got to source something. So I think there are some things that we take for granted, when we have some sort of partner. So my question is, and this will be my last one, Hannah. Y'all have got incredible support systems in your family and some of your friends, and you are both from Minnesota, so that you've got a network that has grown around you from early on and before your career, and you've continued to cultivate it. But that's not always the case for everyone that's listening, right? So I think of Heavenly Hannah that moved to a different state and is killing it in a different state, but she had to source that those resources. So what would both of y'all say, knowing what you know now and what you've learned, to a young professional, or I guess any professional who has moved away from those resources, but does not have that spouse or that family member or that partner at home to lean into on a rough day? What would you do? What would you give advice to for how they cultivate community in their new location, in their new normal? And we'll make John go first, Meredith.
Thank you. I was praying.
Shane, as you thought that, I was kind of, it's such a big question that I actually, like the first thought in my head, I had to jot down in case Meredith did go first. But hopping in here, I think the biggest thing is in that type of situation, you can't be afraid to trust. I mean, it's
Yeah.
hard, as Meredith said. I'm right there with Meredith. It is building that trust is challenging, and there's levels of trust. But I think as I have gone through my career and had conversations with frankly all three of you before about the authenticity and being authentic in nature, like that's trust in itself. It doesn't have to be I'm going to trust you with my life story, but you have to trust people to be authentic, and that is going to build a connection. I think about my younger brother and just looking, he did this. I mean, he went to Vermont after finishing med school and was a resident in Vermont that he'd never been to my knowledge. And, he ended up meeting his wife out there, and now he's never leaving because she's
Right. Yeah.
generation Vermontian or something like that. So, but he was himself. He's a huge music buff in addition to being a doctor. And like, he let that music connection help him find people in the music industry, or in the music hobbies and things like that. I mean, and I think that's just being your authentic self, and don't be afraid to do that. I think it's when you go in and I've got to be perfect, and I can't let them see the unprofessional side of me or the ungroomed side of me. I got to come in and be on all the time. I think that's when it gets really, really hard to branch out, to know that there are people. And I think we all know that these things come in the most unexpected ways. You never fully understand, like, hey, this is what I'm planning to do. I think it's just the people that you kind of come together with, because you are yourself, and where things go. And I mean, going back to my analogy of COVID, it's very different. But I had friends on the East Coast that all of a sudden reached out to me and said, hey, we've got a Thursday night poker group, and we found an app, and we're Zoom calling and laughing at each other and playing poker on this stupid app that Shane can fully attest to being a stupid app, right, Kirschman?
It is. Yeah.
But that's a big piece. And again, these are guys that did I know super well when I lived in Colorado? No, I got to know them through people that knew them, and now we travel to ski together, and we've still got some poker games together. And so I think it's just being that authentic nature, especially in a new spot. And then the last half of that I'd add is, don't be afraid to grab that opportunity when it comes. Especially as we talked about, the benefit that may come from not having those sources or commitments is you can say yes, but you still got to have the courage to do that and say yes, especially when you're in a new place.
Meredith, yours, I think, if there was a lined scale from extrovert to introvert, we know John's more extroverted than you, right? And we also know if Hannah and I moved, I don't have to source anybody. I still have Hannah with me, and Hannah has the world. Everybody that Hannah meets is her best friend. And so she will go out into whatever town we move in BF, Iowa. And all of a sudden, well, I'll have friends through Hannah, right? But you're introverted. Another thing that John didn't speak to, and it's because we have this male privilege that we never think about. Like, I never worry about walking in the dark or going to a bar by myself, but Hannah would worry about that very much. And so, you're an introvert and you're also a female. And if you were moving to a different part of the world and you were having to cultivate these things, what would the advice be on your side?
Oh,
Shane,
it
before
scared me.
Meredith goes, we all know there's no way you're moving to Iowa. It's too cold.
That's right. That's right. South Iowa.
got
Sorry,
family.
Meredith.
No, you're good. I've got family in Iowa. I can introduce you to Shane. You'll
All
find your
right.
place.
The southern tip of Iowa is where I'm headed.
Yeah. So Leon Younger did a master plan for us a few years ago, and we grabbed dinner a couple months ago, and he had asked me the question of, would you be willing to move for a job? And I looked him dead in the eye and I said, I would be scared. It would
Yeah.
scare me because my life is here. My friends are here, my family are here, and I just can't imagine moving away from them because of what a large part of my life they truly are and what they mean to me. But if I were to give advice to someone moving, I think it's very similar to what John said, and that is we've had a lot of talks, both John and I, in the last couple months about being who we are and being that well, and not being afraid to be the oddball out or to say how we feel, even if it might not be appreciated by everyone. And I think that's a huge part of it, is to be yourself, because when you start being someone that you're not, it's really hard then to act that way 100% of the time. I also think saying yes is a huge thing. I think I've done that a lot in my career, is to say yes, probably too much. For my personal life, I probably haven't said yes enough, and that's probably why I
Sure.
haven't found my rich husband yet that I can retire from. Still waiting. Maybe we'll go the billboard avenue. But I think the other thing is not to forget where you came from and the friends that you've developed. And even though you might be halfway across the country, they're still there to support you and to celebrate your successes and to be on the journey with you. And I think that's a large part of who I am, is to not forget where I came from. And I look at friends across the country that I wish I could see more often, that are in different time zones, and all you're doing is texting here and there and trying to grab a phone call when it works. But I think it's not being afraid to remember that the people that got you to where you are still behind you all the time. And so it's never too late to go home. And John and I share a mentor that we've been both working and providing advice to, and I've learned more from her, I think, in the last couple of months than she'll ever learn from me. But that was the conversation. We said that sometimes you do have to go back, and you have to go back to where you feel comfortable and where you know that people are there to support you, and you'll find your way. Life works in incredible ways, and sometimes it's saying I need to go back home to make things work.
When I was away from Hannah those times, I'm an introvert, and I didn't cultivate those 11 months were really lonely months, and I was okay with that probably. And I was also getting to talk to Hannah every single night and FaceTiming the kids, the ones that would talk to me. Some of them were mad that I wasn't there, famously, but and then I was going back on the weekends, and I got a lot of family every weekend, and that was all I needed. I was filling my cup up. But an introvert, male or female, privileged or not privileged, as far as being worried about being out somewhere as a single person in general, um, an introvert's got a little bit tougher path than this, right? If you happen to move away from whatever support system it is, the phone calls are great, but you're by default probably going to live a bit more of a lonely life. And if you're not willing to go, I mean, if we pick John up and put him in Florida, he's gonna join a stickball league, or he's gonna figure out how to ride a dinosaur or an alligator like he rides a horse, and like he'll be fine, and everyone will marvel at it. But like, if you've got to go source, like join some intramural tennis league so you can meet people or something, like, or you're going to be really lonely. And at some point, I think there's a diminishing line to that too. I think if I didn't, if both times I moved away from Hannah, I was within driving distance of going back. So I was able to drive back every weekend. It was a long trip, 3 or 4 hours one way, but it was doable. If that trip from Missouri City to Hutto was from Missouri City, New York, and I saw Hannah 3 times, not every weekend, I don't know. I don't know what
That would
I
have
would
been a
have
different,
done.
yeah, been
Yeah,
a little bit
because I had
different.
friends here, Mike Kimker and others, that were colleagues of mine in this area, and they would get mad at me because I didn't go out with them, but I'm just super introverted and didn't want to go out, and I think it would be really tough as an introvert. And so, um, although introverts are, I think they understand the plight they go through. They understand it's part of who they are. But
John and I have this disagreement at NRPA every year because he's going around trying to see as many people as he possibly can. He'll be up till 2 in the morning, and I'm good to go have dinner with one or two people and be back in my room at 9 and
yeah,
read my book and call it a day. And so I think that's just the difference you see in people. And it's also the beauty, because there's people pushing me to get out and see people. And I know that I need to. And I think that's one of the funny things John and I have had the difference of at conferences is 10 o'clock. If I'm back in my room, I'm doing good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think on that note, and Shane, you alluded to it, and Meredith, you said this really well. I think some of it too, if we're offering advice, is before you do get to that point, and obviously earlier in your career, it's a lot harder, but if you are at a point where you're considering moving or you're looking for that next step and you have to move to get that next step or whatever it may be, or that goal of obtaining a position is more important than where you're doing it, is I'd say make sure you're doing that intentionally and laying the groundwork ahead of time. Going back about 10 years ago when I was contemplating leaving Minnesota for a job, and I went to NRPA, and my goal that year was very intentional. And yes, I was still very much in the phase of it didn't matter what time of day it was. I was going out and doing things and meeting people and whatever it may have been. But there was intention at this conference of if I saw somebody from Washington, because I'd just been on a recent trip there to visit some family and went, hey, this is a cool place. Or I saw somebody from Colorado, which has been my second home for most of my life. Like I went up and just rolled the dice and saw, hey, your name tag says Washington or your name tag says Colorado. Hi, I'm John. Nice to meet you. Can I pick your brain for 5 seconds? And
most extroverted thing I've ever heard in my whole freaking life, by the way.
Well, yes, but that also and
intention though.
Yes, it was the intention. Like, yes, even for an extrovert, I mean, and I say I am an introverted extrovert. I definitely am on the extrovert side.
Right.
No questions about that. But there is the introvert in me. Like, it still takes the courage to do it. And having that intention to set that bar makes that a lot easier. And, the 3 people that I think of the most, 2 of which have been guests on RecLess, is that this taught me to become really good friends with is Sarah Sandquist. That's how I met Sarah. And then I also met Hillary that way in Colorado. And, by meeting them, it also led me to meeting Kevin Whitty. And so that intention led me to that. And these are some of my very good friends now. So I never ended up moving. So again, not necessarily the path that it was, but it was still that intention. And I think, again, that can be enough, I would hope, to drive somebody. And again, it doesn't have to be 1,000 people, or it can just be one. I think that intention, if that's something you have the preparation to do, can make that transition easier too.
I want to do a PSA for the conference. No one will have me come up to them and have me introduce myself to them. So don't worry, it will not happen.
Promise?
You're safe. Promise. I'll be in
I
the
think
back
you
row.
did that to me.
You're lying, because that's how you and I think met anyways, is you came up after a something meeting and did something like that.
Depends on the people. You two are the 2 exceptions.
Wow.
Well, I'm always the exception, so.
I think you might be
For most
more
roles.
extroverted than you think you are, Meredith.
She's just more
maybe a little
intentional.
more. Oh, okay, there we
Intentional.
go.
Yes,
That's
thank
my
you,
word.
Jay.
That's
I
my
love
word for
it.
2026. Intention.
Well, and
Yep.
I mean,
It's a
the
good one.
fact of the matter is, if introvert extrovert was like a baseball player, the extroverts swing more, but it's how much contact you make, right? Like introverts swing less, but it's the contact. And so, in some level, you've got some of those baseball players that swing at everything, and some of them swing 2 or 3 times a game, but we're all judged on, the contact. So I think in similar ways, it's okay. Yeah, you can be one or the other, or on some sort of sliding scale. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
That was a good analogy. If we were having a
Yes, it
drinking
was.
game,
Thank you, Shane.
I know.
Call Tom. He'll be mad.
I know
that I didn't use it
that
for
we
RecLess.
missed it. Right. I know I don't think you've put a whole lot of analogies in on this one, but that was a good one. As we are finishing up, I did want to ask one last question. This show is not just for the professional, but it is also for the loved one of the professional. Like, how do we as loved ones support you guys? So I just wanted to finish up with just one last thing. If you're talking to a new professional, or just not a new professional, I don't want to pigeonhole anybody, a professional in the field, and they are needing to tell their loved one how to best support them, what would you say is maybe the 1 or 2 most impactful things And it doesn't have to be anything big. Like this doesn't have to be some humongous grand gesture, but just maybe one or two things that has been the most impactful thing that a loved one in your life has done to support you in your journey.
You want to go?
If you've got one in the chamber, fire away. Otherwise, I think I have an idea.
I'll let you go first then.
All right.
Oh,
This is another conversation I think that Shane and Meredith and I have had quite a bit, and I've certainly had with other members of the NRPA family, is just show up. Like whatever that means to you in whatever authentic way. Like we've talked about parents and friends and siblings showing up to our events at work, and obviously Hannah, you and Shane talk about it all the time of having the kids come to work events, and that's early on where some of your dates nights was being at the event together. But just thinking about the friends that have come to events that I have done, if my brothers are in town, coming to events. I mean, even talking through situations of hey, I need to talk to my brother, and breaking news here is in Vermont, I was able to talk to my brother about a work situation of do I take a new job or not, and talking with him out there of it was just him showing up, and I appreciated that. So I think as I look at that question, Hannah, that's the biggest thing: is find ways to show up for your loved ones, in whatever capacity is needed or whatever capacity is you're possible or able to give. And I think that will be noticed, and it will go a long ways.
That was very well said. I would say for me, it's understanding that this is more than a job to us and it's a lifestyle. And I think my family and my friends have done a really good job of understanding that this job is going to pull me out of things to deal with emergencies. And I am going to get called in at 2 a.m. that I didn't expect that I would be. But they have a lot of grace with me and understanding that that's the job and this is what the city expects of me. And they know that I do this because I love it. I think the other thing is understanding the impact and the impact we make on a community, the impact we make on a lonely senior citizen to have them flourish and love the life they live, and to see a kid that's been bullied at school now have the confidence to grow up and be an incredible adult and in society. And so I think part of it is understanding the impact. And I think one of the things that will always make me tear up, and I am not a crying person, is my friends and family can say, I'm really proud of the job you do and the lives that you impact. And for me, I think that's been the biggest piece for me, is knowing that they support me through the good times and through the bad times.
Well
well
said
said.
from
Well
both
said.
of you. Yes.
I
Yes.
like it when Hannah shows up with very little clothes on with some sort of red meat and caffeine.
Way to bring that back around, babe.
I just wanted that on the record.
Okay. All right.
It's a nice way to end. It's a nice way to end the episode.
Right?
Yeah.
She's not going to
Uh,
ask me to do these anymore if I keep acting like this.
Oh, so that's your real strategy right there, huh? The introvert getting too much. This
he's
conversation's gone too long, and
That's right.
he's a
I
good
got
sport.
the notice today about noon.
It was last night, but yes. He's a good sport. He's very always supportive, and I appreciate it very much. Well, with that, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Do you guys have anything else that you want to add or
They can ask us a
ask?
question.
Yeah.
Yes, I would just say, nope,
go
John,
ahead,
go.
Meredith.
Nope, you
Nope,
go.
you're up this time. I've interrupted you enough. You're on.
You should see when we go have happy hour together how much
Yeah.
this happens. I think I would just say thank you for doing this podcast, but more importantly, thank you for your friendship. And I look at you three as people in my life that have positively impacted my life, that have been a huge support system for me, knowing that when the good times come, it's fun to celebrate successes. But more importantly, even though Shane is a horrible responder when it comes to
Horrible.
texting, the times I've texted you and said, I am in trouble and I need help, I know I'm going to have a phone call within 5 minutes. And so just thank you for your support, for your love, for your compassion. And the journey's just beginning. So this is a great podcast. I've enjoyed listening. And Hannah, you win host of the night. So
Easily.
Well, Very kind words. Thank you. We appreciate you too. John, anything
Yeah,
from you?
absolutely.
Well, yeah, since Meredith got all the gushy sentiment that I would echo and just say ditto to, I was going to fire a question at the two of you
Do
and
it.
just say, since we are, since again the goal is to really share what we can to help others, and obviously that's why we do what we do. Meredith talked about our passion for what we do is we all have a soft spot for helping people. That's why we are public servants. Even you, Hannah, in your role as you're talking, maybe not public, but you're doing this and you're doing everything else, but my question to you is, since you guys have lived the married life and the supported life in that capacity, and you've done episodes like this already with other married couples, is there anything that either surprised you or you went, yes, I wish more, I'm going to share that with other single professionals in their journeys, that you guys heard from Meredith or I, or in this conversation?
Oh, I thought you were going to say with anybody because I didn't know you could marry employees, Tom. No, I think Meredith talked about vulnerability, and that has, I think, at least on the males side of the world, I think we're very fortunate, John, to live in a time that you're allowed to be a vulnerable male. That wasn't a thing. That wasn't a thing. I think our parents, our dads, did not know that, and I don't think Meredith or Hannah's dads would disagree with that in some capacity, at least not outwardly, in some way. And I think there's a lot of self-discovery that comes with vulnerability, and I think it's really tough for someone else to love you if you don't know who you are, if you're not showing them who you really are. Because if you're always projecting, th those people are trying to love you, but they don't actually love you. They love the projection of you. They love the mask that you're wearing. And so I love that Meredith talked about being vulnerable and being who you are. I've always loved how authentic John is as well, because I love the idea that people like me for who I am, and there's warts there for sure, and there's slow response times and disagreements and other things. And if they stick with me, then I know that they love me, and I hope they feel that same for me with them. And so, for me, I think vulnerability is some sort of a superpower that everyone can resource from, pull into. It's not like your ability to jump or swim fast or do math in your head really quickly. There's some incredible talents that everyone has that other people are quite jealous of. Speaking, being able to recall things quickly, having some incredible memory, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A good jawline, whatever it is. Uh, but or the ability to grow a beard. Look at this bad boy right here. But everyone can be vulnerable. You just have to really focus on trying. And there's some really incredible things that happen when you start to love yourself. You start to actually see the people that love you as well. And that's not a bad thing. And in a world where there feels like a lot more bad than good, um, I think finding someone that really loves you, appreciates you, cares for you as a friend, as a coworker, as a spouse, whatever it um, is a really enlightening thing to have.
I don't know how to follow that up completely because that was pretty great. But I will say I really appreciated hearing you both say you need people to show up in your life, and you need to be able to trust, that people are going to be there, and that understanding. So I think I appreciate y'all saying all of those things, because I think that these are all things that others need to hear too. And I'm excited for us to be able to share it with others, and for I hope that someone gained a nugget out of this, like if as they're listening, that they've gotten something. So thank you guys so much for giving your time. I know this was it's been a long day, and I appreciate y'all stopping in and visiting with us.
It's a long episode. It went for a
It
while.
was. It was.
It's good.
So with that, I guess we'll say goodbye. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.
See y'all.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This was great.
See ya.
There's a place
Bye.
you can always call.